On this episode of Robe Chats, the podcast.
I love subtlety in the lighting design. I tried everything I could to get out of theater. It's funny how a passion can turn into a career. It's the right vibe for me.
Lighting designer and educator, Matt Taylor. Welcome back to Robe Chats, the podcast. My name's Brian Matthews. I am your host. And as you can see, we are once again recording here at the USITT Conference and Expo in Columbus, Ohio. And we are honored today to be joined by Mr. Matt Taylor, lighting designer and head of lighting at Wayne State University. So Matt, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great.
Have you ever been to, I assume you have, being a educator, you've been to USIT before?
Yeah, on and off. not. I don't think consistently. I haven't been great at being consistently. Work pops up or whatever else. But I've done a handful over the years. So.
Well, thank you for coming out and for chatting with us. And really kind of just want to start off and kind of get your background into how you got into this industry. Everybody's kind of got their own little specific story about what brought them into lighting design or, entertainment production. So what brought you into this crazy world that we call home?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll try not to go on a whole monologue about it.
No, it's okay.
Feel free to edit out if you need to.
We got time.
It's weird because I never thought I would be a lighting designer. I honestly didn't know it was a career when I was growing up. I grew up in a really small rural town in South Carolina. And our high school, I was in the high school drama club and we did shows, but I was really an actor and director. And it wasn't until my senior year I was directing a play for a one-act festival that I was really excited to direct. And I was building the costumes myself with a friend and doing all these things, the very high school production. And I realized, even though I didn't know it was a career, I was lighting has a big impact on these when I see shows. And our system it was an old slide patch dimmer. We had a console, but you couldn't, it was a little two-scene preset and it didn't work. No one knew how to make it talk to the slide patch. And so the way we ran lights is somebody would run in the back and slide up each circuit to a non-dim.
Oh, wow.
And that's how we turned the lights on for the play. And I was like, well, that doesn't feel like what they do when I see these other shows on tour and stuff. So maybe I can figure some stuff out. And I started just kind of books in the library, reading, trying to learn a little bit about how it worked, and ended up, getting eventually a grant for the school to replace the dimmers and be able to do some stuff. But for that show, at least got it functional and had the lights turn on, which was pretty exciting because we hadn't had them all done. But then I went to college. I went to a small liberal arts school and still thought it was acting, directing. I didn't, that was sort of just the nerd in me that wanted my show to look good.
Yeah.
And I got to school and one of my professors said, don't take offense to this, but you're not actually a very good actor. But you might try. And I'm glad she said it. I'm so glad she said it. But she said, but you might try lighting. You did pretty well in the class. You might try it. And it was a small program. We did 5 or 6 student shows a year. And I ended up lighting most of them. There were only 2 of us who really cared to do any of it. So I did it all. And I tried everything I could to get out of theater the whole time. I was a biology major and a religious studies major for a while and a pre-med. I did all these other things. Trying everything I could, and it kept sucking me back in. Yeah. At the end of my 4 years, I was like, well, I don't know enough because I'm out of the liberal arts program. And so I went to grad school because I thought, well, if I'm going to make this a career, I still need some more technical skills. And while I was there, did 2 summers at the Williamstown Theater Festival. And that just changed the trajectory of my entire career. Right. It was anyone who's listening to this knows it was a grueling, and there's lots of feelings in the world about it, but I owe my entire career to being there and to that experience. So, yeah. And then just kept going.
Well, I was kind of doing my research on you and saw that you got your credits for Broadway, off-Broadway, regional theater, and you've done a lot of lighting design in theater. When you are in those moments of creating your designs, for students who might be listening or watching, how do you go about crafting a lighting design? What is that process? How does it begin for you? Yeah,
I think this is the actor-director part of my background, but it's very, I get very focused in a story on relationships between characters. I get very focused in carving out spaces for these relationships to take place and to exist. And that combined with, people ask me, what do you see when you start to do a design? And it's probably the craziest answer, but I don't really see color or shape or anything else. I kind of feel a rhythm to the piece. I feel how the piece moves.
Yeah.
And so that sort of movement through time and how I move the audience through time to bring specificity to these relationships and the areas and the places they're taking place in is probably the foundation of all of my design. It's kind of where I start everything. And even when I'm starting with a plot, I'm thinking to myself, how will this move and flow over time? And of course, over the course of my career, went from Par 64s and Fresnels to Robe moving lights.
Yeah.
So in a movement world, I've been really happy to see that. But yeah, that's where I start foundationally. Is the relationship between these characters, often characters in the audience. That relationship is important as well to me, and carving out that space for them to exist in whatever this world is. And it's a little different when I tackle opera or dance, cruise ships even, right?
Right.
But I think I always sort of bring that specificity of what the connection is to the performer and the audience or other performers, whatever, both, depending on what it is at the time. That makes sense.
Well, I like that you brought up the that you were doing these designs as technology was evolving, because it does evolve so fast.
So much.
So just kind of speak a little bit to that. How has technology going from, par cans and Lecos to moving lights, how has that changed the idea of lighting design or the philosophy of lighting design?
Yeah, I mean, a ton. Obviously, we have way more flexibility than we ever did. We can do way more without grabbing a ladder and having to go change the color or changing the focus. Rigs become a lot more versatile. We have a student coming up who their big challenge on their final project is going to be to light an entire show with moving lights. They're not going to use any static fixtures, which will be a great exercise for them because it's not uncommon at this point.
No.
Just the amount of choice, I think, is huge. And I think each tool kind of provides something a little bit new and interesting for the audience. And that's the thing in that world of defining the relationship between characters and the audience for me, or performers in the audience if it's dance. These new tools give me new ways to do that in ways that excite the audience and brings them into the moment in a way they might not have experienced before.
Yeah.
And I think that's the real magic of it, is they get to, I tell people all the time, audiences are surprised when things happen they don't expect. And even if it's not a massive, because I love subtlety in a lighting design, even if it's not a massive, strobe light hitting or something like that, even just, I'm looking at the Tetra 2s over here doing their flower effect, and there's places I could see using that, that would help to give the audience a really magical experience. And we could have tried to make that 25 years ago. It would have been a very different process.
Much easier these days.
Much easier these days, by far.
Yeah, I like the comment that you made about the subtlety of lighting design, because there are a lot of times when the biggest impact and the biggest moments that occur in theater are the most scaled down, right? And it could be just like a simple one light on a performer on stage, and so kind of, if you can expound on that, how it doesn't always have to be big and in your face. It can be scaled back and subtle. Is that something that you speak with your students about?
All the time. Usually what I have to say, and I warn them all before they walk into tech, I usually have to say to them, you've got all this on right now, and I need you to turn off everything but one light, the one that's important to you right now. Obviously, it can expand me out. Sometimes it's not just one light, right? But I need them to think about, what is actually making the statement in this moment. It is a common experience for people in general, but especially young student designers, to want to add more to solve problems, to want to add more to bring things. And 9 times out of 10, I would say in the theater, they need to edit down. And that's always when I walk up behind them and I lean over and they're like, scare them a little bit. They always say I need a cat bell because I just sneak up on them in the theater. But when I walk up on them, they know what I'm going to say is pick the one light that matters the most. And I want you to turn everything else off, build it back out from there. But you just fill in too much and you just build to a point where it's like, it's muddy now, it's too convoluted, and carving it down to that one idea is really important.
Yeah. Well, let's transition from there into your work at Wayne State University. You're the head of lighting design there.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with Wayne State University?
Oh man, I was teaching at a school in Utah at the time, and my partner's from Michigan, and we wanted to be back east a little bit, be back near family and friends. And I'm from South Carolina, he's from Michigan, so being able to be back in sort of spaces that are close to our family and friends that we've known forever was important to us. And that was really the impetus for applying for the job. And then, I had hesitations. I didn't know much about Detroit at the time, and I was like, "What's going on here? Like, is this place I can actually do?" And I went and I did the campus interview, and I fell in love with the energy of the school. It is a school that constantly wants to reimagine itself, and I don't mean in a way that it can't focus on anything solidly.
Right.
But the school and the department are constantly sort of dedicated to what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Do we need to do it different to make students succeed and to give them the best experience while they're here? And it's hard to find that. Everyone wants to do it, I think, but there's a real commitment to it, and I thought that was important. And then the city of Detroit I fell in love with. It's I just say on a regular basis, it's the right vibe for me. It's it's a mid-sized Midwestern city, and I'm not Midwestern by my roots, at least. But there's tons of art. Wayne State is in what they call the cultural center of the city, and the Detroit Institute of the Arts and Museum of Contemporary Art and Design are all both just across campus. So there's so much exciting theater being done there right now.
I'm a little surprised by that because I guess I've never been to Detroit.
Yeah.
And I guess that just the nuance of Detroit that people think about is automobiles and car manufacturing and stuff like that. I wouldn't think it's an arts haven, but
what happens when people are coming back from something, when in the world of if we use the analogy of a phoenix, and I'm not saying Detroit was ever that bad because I don't think it was. You'll hear people say Detroit never left, and I think that's true. But in that mentality, that hustle, that we're gonna survive this thing. And once we've survived it, we're going to come back from those ashes. That's when arts thrive. That experience of having some real struggle and then rebounding and finding yourself creating and in a space that you get to fill with your own.
Yeah.
That's when art thrives. So I agree. It shocked me at first, and then I was like, of course, it makes total sense. It's not a thing.
Well, that's a great little nugget of information there. So thank you for sharing that. For anybody who's listening, go to Detroit.
Listen, I'm obsessed. Anybody who comes, we have my partner and I have a Google Doc we share with friends on tour of like things to do when they're in town and like places to see, and it's just a really cool energy. It's a really cool energy, and that we're right in the center of the city. It's an urban institution, right? So that energy in the city bleeds directly into our students and our faculty and our university in a way that's really exciting.
Nice. Let's talk a little bit about Wayne State University and your program there. Just kind of walk us through what the curriculum's like. How many students you guys have, and then how you kind of put the program together there at Wayne State University.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that's constantly evolving. But we are a production centric curriculum for sure. You get a lot of hands-on work when you're in school. We've shifted a bit away from it. Some people who know the program know it when it was a rep theater company. And we've shifted away from that, but the students are still, they're busy. They're doing stuff all the time. And, I very much learned by applying my own experiences, by people mentoring me through production work, or whether I was assisting and working alongside them or whatever else. And I style my mentorship a lot in the same way. It in some ways is more apprentice style than it is direct instruction. We have classes, we sit in class, we talk about things. But one of the things that's really beautiful about the curriculum at Wayne State is the master's level, at least, is very flexible. So we're able to, develop a plan with an individual student based off their needs. So when I'm recruiting students, I can bring in a variety of people with a variety of experiences and tailor an experience to what they're looking for. And I think that's really important. We have a bunch of different classes that we offer in rotation. Certainly students take a lighting 1, 2, and 3 over the course of their time there. And even our undergrads have access to lighting 1, 2, and 3 as well, and most of the other courses we offer. So this year I'm teaching a course on, am I allowed to say it?
Sure.
Go see and talk about it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
My colleague and I have affectionately called it "Go See Shit and Talk About It" is the name of this class. And the whole idea behind the class is to get the students out into the theater. Yeah. Some of them we watched online just for access, right? But we watch a show every week, and we come in on Tuesday and we talk about how the design contributed to it and what that experience was for them, and spend a lot of time talking about how they can incorporate that design into their own artistic voice and how they can take those conventions for their own work. And it's been a really great class so far. So I get to offer things like that. In the fall, I'm offering a class on programming, being a head electrician and assisting. And I should caveat and say, we're not trying to learn a console or head electrician skills. It's all soft skill based discussions. So, what, as a programmer, what sorts of soft skills, what sorts of preparation, things like that, not desk stuff. We do that anyway in the theater.
Right.
And then our production work's really important. Our classes that, all our students take a class when they're in production. And that class actually meets. A lot of universities it doesn't, but we actually meet as a whole collective, all the designers at once. And we talk through their designs and where they are, and they get to present to their peers, and they get feedback from the design faculty, and it's become a really beautiful space that we enjoy as well. And then in the classroom, I said classroom, I meant theater, because it is a classroom for me as well.
Yeah.
In the theater, I tailor my mentorship a bit to each student, to be honest. How I work with them depends on how they're going to respond to certain notes. They all respond a little bit differently. And it depends on where I know they are in their own career and where they are on their journey right now. I had a student recently that I let just kind of play around in the theater for far longer than I normally would, and that I certainly would not get away with commercially when I'm working professionally. But they needed to play at that moment to learn some stuff. I think that's kind of the gist of what we do there.
With you mentioned that you feel like that your background as an actor and a director really helped you as a lighting designer when you were working professionally. Do you encourage your students to sort of do that sort of things, learn the craft of theater as a whole in order to make them stronger as a designer?
Absolutely. And even beyond that, beyond that, being a human. Like I said, when I was in undergrad, I changed majors so many times. I was a religious studies major for a while, and it wasn't because I was particularly religious. I was curious about religion. And I took a Buddhism class and a class in the New Testament and a Hinduism class. And I learned things about other people that I wouldn't have expected. I took a psychology class, and I learned about how people think in a way that I wouldn't have expected. So, I say all the time, and I know I'm not the only one to say this, lots of us do, but we're not doing theater for theater. We're doing theater for people, for humans, for the experience of being a human. And
I love that.
And they have to do it all to know that, right? To be able to explore that and figure out what it is. So more than anything, yes, in the discipline, take acting classes, and they're required to take, play analysis and dramaturgy and all these other classes, but also explore being a human. Got to get out there and do that.
Yeah. When you are mentoring your students, and I assume that there were people in the past that kind of did that with you.
Totally.
When you look back over your career, now that you're doing that with students, is there anybody that stands out in your mind as maybe a mentor or somebody that kind of showed you the way to go?
Yeah, totally. I'll take it back even a little bit further though and say, even in my educational career, there were people like the professor came to me and said, "You're not a very good actor, but you're a great lighting designer." I'm still in touch with her. I'm scared to say her name. Don't watch it. Anna Sarton. She was fantastic. Could have the best professor I possibly could have had. And it was a small program. She was scenic and lighting design. So she taught me a lot of my own aesthetic and my own art and understanding what I was bringing to the stage as a whole, which I think was a beautiful way to learn, at least at first. And my graduate mentor, Stan Kay, he certainly did everything he could to help me I think the first conversation he and I had in grad school, he said, "Where do you want to go?" And I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" He's like, "Where do you want to go? You're done in 3 years. Where do you want to go?" And I told him, and he said, "We'll make it happen. Here's some ideas I have. Here's some stuff you should do, and we'll make it happen." And I definitely did that. And then when I moved to New York, I learned more, I think, working as an assistant and an associate in New York with Ken Billington and Rui Rita, both who I am still very good friends with, and both who I still work with at times. Rui and I in particular, very good friends, but we also we work together all the time. We tag in and out of design work. It's a really wonderful relationship that's happened. But sitting in Kim Billington's office, as a freshly graduated from school, and hearing people come in and talk about design, and I mean titans of the industry, Broadway legends that are standing there talking, and I'm like 25 in the corner, but they showed me the way. They all showed me the way, and there's countless other people. Philip Rosenberg was huge in helping to show me the way and sort of guide and mentor me through. And then any number of other people. Ken Posner I worked with for a bit. He was massive in helping me. I had admired Ken for years, and he took a chance on bringing me as an intern. And Yeah, it's been a really, that's the thing that I tell people all the time. Everyone in this industry actually wants you to be able to succeed in it, which is a really beautiful thing. Yeah, it's competitive, right? We're all competing for some of the similar jobs, but they all want you to succeed, especially if you want to succeed and you show up and you're like, I'm going to do it. And then I have to say, man, my mom, I know she's not in theater, but my mom, when I said I was going to go to school for
You
theater.
might be the first person that has said my mom.
But here's the thing:
that answer.
My whole family, none of them are theater, none of them are theatrical, and none of them are very super into arts. Right? It's a very. My mom's a physical therapist, and the rest of my family, lots of them are engineers. Dad's a businessman, and I go. I want to go to school for theater, and they're like, "Ooh!" They let me though. That's the thing. They let me, and that's I talked about exploring and the importance of students exploring to find the art, but also humanity. And my mom let me, and she supported me the whole time and encouraged me to do it. And none of the other people would have been possible if she hadn't really been there to support me in that way. So it's huge.
That's great.
Kind of like
Shout
mom
out
nerd
to
fan.
moms.
Like what a ridiculous thing to say.
Shout out to moms everywhere. When you are in those moments of just sort of reflection and kind of looking at theater in general, what is it that you love about theater? What is it that keeps you passionate about, wanting to educate that next generation or keep creating lighting design as you do? What is it that makes you passionate about theater?
Yeah, as I've gotten older, I've thought back, like, what was it that I was doing? When I was in school and I was changing majors on a regular basis, like, why was I doing that? What was I doing? And I realized that was my way, in a very academic way, which is wild because I actually wasn't a very good student, but in a very academic way of exploring people and trying to learn more about people. I was really curious about people and how we connect, why we connect, how we create the things we do, both art, but also structurally and in our society. And that curiosity about people is what keeps driving me. I think that's what this art seeks to do. And it doesn't matter to me if it's a cruise ship show or if it is a Sam Shepard play. Like it doesn't matter what, or a Swan Lake. They all seek to kind of understand who we are and what we're doing here, and tell that back to people and let people explore that by consuming those same stories. I haven't really thought, this is literally on the fly thought here in the moment, but it's kind of my religion in a lot of ways. And I don't mean that in the way that it is a religion. Don't anyone get mad at me about that. I just mean to say that for me, it supports and nourishes that element of me that seeks to understand humanity and seeks to help other people understand it too.
I can see the philosophy background in you.
Yeah, right. I took a lot of classes.
You're very thought-provoking in your answers.
I appreciate that. I mean, I like to think, probably to a detriment at times. I overthink, I'm sure, at times.
Do you try to instill that into your students?
Oh yeah, well they have
think
to
that
be,
way.
Totally, they have to be curious and want to grab onto stuff and look for stuff. And I think thinking this way is really just curiosity, right? It's really just understanding or wanting to understand better. And got to be curious in this industry, both for the storytelling, but also so that professionally, so you can make it, so you can do the things you need to do.
Nice. Well, looking back over your career, as you look over the different designs that you've done and the projects that you've worked on, when you think about them, is there any one that sort of stands out in your mind? Everybody's kind of has that one. It doesn't have to be the biggest one or the most popular one, but everybody sort of has that one that they look back on and they're like, everything just sort of worked in that situation. Do you have that production?
Yeah. When people ask me my favorite show, this is going to sound like a philosophy answer, and I don't intend it to. It's true, I promise. I always have a hard time because every experience becomes about the people I worked on the show with.
Right.
And so I have like incredibly fond memories of almost every show I've done, even some that I walked into and I was like, this is a disaster. What am I doing here right now? And I had plenty of those early in my career in particular. I remember calling someone and being like, they said X, Y, and Z. One of my mentors, they said X, Y, and Z, and I got here and the lights aren't hung. There's no electricians. I think I should quit. And he was like, you should do what you think you need to do. But, if you can make it work, I would stay and make it work. But even that one turned out to be a thing that I was proud of in the end because I felt like I found some exciting stuff. I think, I did a production when I was living out in California of Fiddler on the Roof. And the director, who's a very good friend of mine, he was also the artistic director of this company at the time. He wanted to do a pared down version of Fiddler on the Roof in a black box with a cast of 6. And I remember we were probably at the bar when he told me this, like most good conversations in the theater begin. And I was like, his name's also Matt. I was like, Matt, you might be insane. Like, I'm not sure what are you talking about? And then we got into talking about it, and it was a beautiful show. And anytime I tell people 6-person Fiddler on the Roof, they're like, sure about that? And I'm like, it worked. And that stands out as, again, not the biggest show I ever did.
Yeah.
The opposite, like pared down quite a bit.
Yeah.
And the experience was pretty magical.
Nice. Well, I also like how you mentioned that some of your biggest enjoyments of the shows you've worked on comes with the people that you worked on the show with. Just talk a little bit about the importance of being able to work with people in this career.
It is a work with people industry, you know. Even the folks who are backstage, crew, IA hands, we all work together, and we all work. And you know, I tell students in particular, but even other designers I'm mentoring or whatever else, whether it's school or not, you have to be able to walk into that room and work with people, and you have to be able to walk into that room and work with people in a way that people don't go, well, that guy was a dick. You have to be able to come in and bring something productive. In a lot of ways, you have to like people, because it's not genuine if you don't like people. If you don't like talking to people and working with people, like it's not genuine anymore. It doesn't read as genuine. People can feel that sort of falseness that you're bringing. Yeah. So I bet, you know, I'm making up some statistics here. I'm not a math guy. I'm philosophy, as you pointed out, but 90
philosophy and mathematics are two different things.
There you go. Here we go. 90% of the industry, I would say, is about people, is about working with people, about how you function in the room. It's huge.
Nice. Well, I'll let you get out on this last one. And I like to ask people this one, and I think you might actually have a good answer, being the philosophical background that you have. If you could go back to that young Matt Taylor in South Carolina who's trying to figure out those two dimmers backstage to get the lights to work, and give him a piece of advice, just knowing where your career has gone, what would that advice be?
Yeah, it would be keep playing and keep exploring, and keep at whatever it is that you enjoy. It's funny how a passion can turn into a career. You know, I have this conversation all the time, like, did you know you wanted to do this? No, I knew I liked it. I kept doing it because I liked it, and it turned into a career. And I think if you really enjoy something in that way, and you explore and you continue to sort of like be curious about it, and it keeps you curious, because that's the trick. It should keep you curious if you really like it. Keep going. You never know what'll happen. And you know, in the world of mentors, Philip Rosenberg said something to me when I first moved out of New York. I said, "Oh, am I making the biggest mistake? Like, is this a huge mistake? Am I going to like ruin my career forever?" And he said, "I don't know. You don't know. No one knows. But the reality is, if you made the wrong choice, you can make a different one. Yeah. And if you go out there and you explore this choice," and he didn't use the word explore, but it works, and it doesn't work out for you, then you can always change that decision and go back and do something different. So that's my biggest advice. Keep exploring, keep finding things you're passionate about, keep playing with them, even if they don't seem to have a linear career path. I guarantee you my entire family are like, he went to school for theater and somehow he is still working professionally. It's wild. So yeah, keep exploring.
Nice. Matt, thank you very much for taking the time to sit and chat with us. I really appreciate it. And I feel that the kids at Wayne State are very lucky to have you there. So
thank you. It's been great having
much success.
Thank you so much. It's been great being with you.
Remember, you can find our podcast on all your favorite podcasting platforms. You can also watch us on YouTube. We sign off today the way that we always do. May the light always shine your way. You can make it the Robe way. Have a great day.